Okay, folks, buckle up. It's my honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, a man of stage and screen who continuously shatters the expectations from the Broadway to the international stage. But he's not just an actor. He's a New York Times bestselling author, a passionate LGBTQIA advocate, and most recently, he's the impresario of ceremonies, bringing camp couture from the fringes of fashion into the mainstream spotlight on the global hit reality show, The Traitors. This true troubadour of our modern era has crossed continents and inspired generations, from portraying superheroes to Bond villains, collaborating with Jay-Z, and having heart-to-hearts with Sesame's own Elmo. As an openly bisexual man and immigrant, he uses his platform to champion diversity and push the boundaries of queer representation, inspiring people worldwide. While his wit might be as sharp as his cheekbones, our speaker is more than just glitter and glam. Today, we'll delve into the intersection of art and activism, exploring global views on queer rights, and the crucial importance of intergenerational dialogue within the LGBTQIA+ community. So, without further ado, please welcome the one, the only Alan Cumming.
Thank you.
And the crowd goes wild. A digital round of applause. Whoop. There we go. So you are a very busy man. I was just saying, thank you so much for making the time. You're all over the world. You're doing 100 different things always. How are you even here? What's happening? Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, first of all. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit bonkers right now, even for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I just sort of roll with it, just try and nap when I can and focus. I mean, I think the thing that's when you're so busy that you forget things or forget to call people back or forget to read something. That's what's annoying about it, that you don't have that sort of sense of order. I suppose that's what I'm seeking in my life, is order. But
more order.
Some order.
How does Alan order, sir? In the court, how does Alan find order? How do you do that?
Well, I guess order to me means a clear mind and sort of feeling away from all the noise. And also confident that everything's calm and running smoothly. So I have people, I have a lot of people help me in my life, in various parts of the world. And it's just sort of and that's one of the other things. You have to be a team leader as well, which is sort of, as you get older, all these new things you've got to learn how to do. That's one of them.
Yes,
I think that's my sense of my order. To me is about just feeling that everything's going smoothly, and you can then focus on what you really want to do.
Yeah. So let's jump into it, Queen. So let's talk about representation. And so you've had such an illustrious, vivid, dynamic career. I'm curious, what have you experienced? What's your temperature of how representation has evolved during your career? And what are you still hoping to see in regarding of visibility and queer storytelling and representation?
Well, in the court, I've been doing this for 40 years. So, there's been massive changes. It was sort of, it's incredible. I was at this conference recently, and it was very depressing about what is going on in the world, just in general, not just about representation in our work, but about just all these heinous. We think it's bad in America with all these, laws against queer and trans people, but everywhere in the other places in the world, it's equally as awful and worse sometimes. But what I thought was really fascinating about that was that it's happening everywhere. There's these sort of phases, and it's all about backlash. And over the course of my life, I found that there was no representation. There was, when I was first starting out, a queer person would be a joke character, a stock sort of cliche, and then it became be sort of coded and hidden. Then it became sort of, there were queer characters, but they're all either dying of AIDS or were drug addicts or, committing suicide. So, and then it became sort of, there was the phase, I remember the phase of sort of Will and Grace and everything. Isn't it great? We've been accepted. And I found that sort of, oh, well, yes, but the main character is a gay man who never has sex and is kind of in love with this woman. And, it's sort of, is that really a positive message for us? I'm not sure that it is. So there was sort of a lot of representation, but it was sort of slightly sanitized and slightly heteronormative. And I think in a way, the great thing that was said at that conference that I meant to say and I forgot was that although all these terrible things are happening, actually right now in history is the best possible time there has been for you to be queer. Even with all these awful things happening, there's a backlash right now because perhaps people have been sideswiped about how haters have been sideswiped about how quickly things have changed and how positively they've changed in our view. And I think that's what we're dealing with. But I think actually now, in terms of representation, it's great because I don't think the backlash has actually reached the media and TV yet in terms of I don't think anyone's saying, oh, let's not have so many trans people on TV. I think if anything, people are saying, let's have more trans people. We've got to, I'm a big advocate of exposure therapy. I just think you just give people more of the thing that they're afraid of or uncomfortable with, and eventually they'll be fine with it. So I think we're in a pretty good place. I think that actually what we have to do is have more representation, though, to kind of get over this hump. And I actually really thought, things recently, like I loved that Baby Reindeer in the way that it introduced his bisexuality and his then, he went on, had a trans woman as his girlfriend, and it had no sort of fanfare or sensationalism attached to it. That was just what he did. I thought he handled that so well, and sort of an object lesson in how to deal with all that. So I think things are in a pretty good place in terms of representation in the media. It's just the rest of the world that's fucking shit.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, you were at a conference recently. You're Scottish born, you're an immigrant, you've worked internationally, and there's the rights that you are, the political shifts that you're noticing that you've seen. You were just traveling, right? And you picked up some things while you were in France and in Europe, and there's all the stuff that's coming down and in Italy. Is there anything you'd like to speak to on that?
Well, it's sort of, it's like this populism. I think it's such a terrible word because it sort of makes it seem like it's popular. Italy, well, Germany, there was a huge rise. France, they've called that election now. In Britain, there's an election on the 4th of July, and there's this awful thing called the Reform Party that is just so, it's heinous what they're suggesting. And I just think in a funny sort of way, when I was doing that at that conference, talking to all these academics, like this, there's always a backlash to any sort of surge in something. There is a backlash. We're a very cyclical people, just as world citizens. We go in phases and circles. And I think but what I think is interesting is that why don't we prepare for the backlash more? Why are we all surprised by the backlash? And that's I think that's what we're experiencing right now in America is the backlash, especially against trans people, is so huge and so pervading. And I just think, I think what happened was after we got marriage equality and the Defence of Marriage Act and all, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed, I think we all were a bit complacent. We got a bit complacent, and now we're sort of shocked into thinking, oh God, we've got to take to the streets again. We've got to really fight for, and the 2025 sort of treaties that think tank has done, and it's going to be Trump's agenda. It's horrifying. They're telling us they're not like, it's erasure is a part of the ideology. It's not just, oh, we're scared of these people. It's erasure, and they're really, really serious. And we have to wise up and wake up. And I especially think what really worries me is young people being so disillusioned and by things that I absolutely agree with. I don't agree at all with the way this administration has aided Israel. But I feel you have to be able to disagree on some things in order to agree on a bigger thing, which is that we can't have fascism, which is what we're going to get. And so I'm all about now just trying to get make sure that young people vote and don't just stay at home as a protest, because a no vote is a vote for the other side, and a vote for ending your right to vote, probably.
Yeah. Well, I love how for you, you've been such a proponent of intergenerational dialogue. You do it in your shows, in your cabaret shows. You do it by fostering community when you open a club at Club Cumming, a lot of people there. It spans all ages, but of course it brings out a young crowd as well, where you can get a stage for these people that we want to be heard, and also it's a way to inform them. So what other ways do you try to rally the young troops to get them engaged, and what do you want to tell them other than just vote?
Well, I think it's I really do think it's a two-way street. I stayed up late the other night chatting to two young people, and Grant, my husband, partner, said when I came to bed, I went, "It's so good to talk to young people." Like I'm some sort of granddad. Well, I suppose I could be their granddad, but I think it is really important. I think I learned such a lot. I love when I work in films, and I've just come back from doing the Traitors, and the people who drive me to and from work are like 24. And so I have a lot of time at either end of the day with a very young person, and I just love finding out what their lives are like, and what they're thinking, and what has passed them by, and what has registered for them in terms of, politics, but also just sort of in the zeitgeist of culture. And I just think that's really important, to stay informed. And I always have, an assistant I always like to have a very young assistant. Michael, my assistant's 26, I think, right now. That's kind of old. But I just
Clock's
think
ticking,
that
Michael. Clock's ticking.
the 2-year rule, remember. I just think it's really a great thing for me to. It's not like I, want to know what everyone's music, because it's just about what life is like for you. What life is like, what things are happening in your life that I never had to deal with. And I think that's really important. And I feel like I have been around the block a few times, and I have wisdom, and I am able to, hopefully not in a big old boring patronizing way, but just say sometimes, oh, well, you know what, that's happening because blah. And also, it's great being at my age when you realize that this whole cyclical thing again, life is just the same show with different costumes. So when the same thing comes around again, that's already happened to you a couple of times, I guess wisdom is how you choose to deal with it this time. And so that's nice to share that with younger people. So and I feel like I feel it's engagement is the thing that I'm always sort of saying to them, that you can't be nihilistic about life, even though you feel powerless. That's the whole point. They want you to feel powerless, not just governments and things, but people in power stay in power by people not doing anything to stop them. And sometimes they're nice people in power, but often they're not. And I just feel, one of the things I was talking about was recently, remember when Target pulled all those Pride things off the shelves because some group of religious mums complained? I just thought, why did we not have a boycott of Target? Why did the LGBT community not say, don't shop at Target until they make good on this? We've got to use our power more. And that's what I always say to young people as well. Don't underestimate your power, but your power is a collective thing, and you've got to engage with other people.
Yeah, it's so important. And I loved, well, first off, when you were talking about your hope you're not in a boring way, I've never heard that word describing you. You are anything but boring. And over the years, I've seen, like you said, you've had, young assistants. And what's really beautiful too is that's a relationship that you foster individually, and then you set them free and you let them do things. And some of your assistants have gone on to win Tonys and do all these incredible things.
I know, Julie's big lawyer. I mean, it's so, and also I feel like they're my children. Do you know what I mean? That's what was lovely. My mum was here last year, and we had a wee party, and there was 7 of my former assistants or interns were there to see her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And even last night, I was at Club Cumming for the anatomy lesson, for the drawing. I modelled at the drawing thing. And Eddie was there, of course, and also Ryan, who used to be my assistant. Now he's some posh job at Google. And I feel it's really, it's such an intimate relationship when you're a personal assistant. You know, it's very personal, and the ones that work and stay. I mean, and I do have a 2-year rule. I think that after 2 years, you should have decided what you want to do with your life. And so, like, sometimes I have to shove them out the door a little. But I think it's a really good 2 years with me doing all the weird things, variety of things I do. You get a really good sort of crash course in many, many possible careers. And then I send them off and I help them get jobs. And unless, sometimes I fire them, sometimes they have to be fired. But actually what's cute is that even the ones that I fired still are friends. Even something, one of the ones who was there with my mom. So that's really, it's a lovely thing to, I think even if you've got to do that, to do it with kindness and in a way that is just saying, this is the best thing for all of us. And I hope we stay friends. And sometimes you don't, sometimes it doesn't work out. But for the most part, it does. And I really love that I do think of all my assistants as like my children, especially as I get older. And especially when Ethan, who was my last assistant, was it because of COVID and everything, he kind of lived with us for like a year.
Oh, so really?
Like our teenage child in the basement, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. In the basement, just watching TV. Knock, Dad, Alan, knock. Jeez.
I know, yeah, it was like that. Like, oh, can we come in? But also, he's downstairs again. You see her staying with Henry, who's Henry, my musical director when I do concerts. They're a couple now, so I see him all the time. And it is like all the time. He just comes up from the stairs from below. And I go, oh, I didn't realize you were here. What time did you get home? Things like that.
What a fun dad.
I know, that'd be quite a fun dad. I actually have this dream that, because I've not had children, I'm really glad I didn't have children, but I sort of, because I just see the way that people's lives are destroyed for like 16 years or something, when, and then they kind of come back can come out again to go to dinner and are exhausted. But for those 16 years, of course it's gorgeous and everything as well, but I'm really glad I did. But I sort of had this dream. I sort of hoped that maybe somebody I'd had sex with when I was like 18, a girl might suddenly pop up and say, oh, Anna, I didn't tell you for the last 18 years, but here's your fully formed and fabulous 18-year-old son or daughter. But it never happened, alas. I do know someone that did happen to, though.
Really?
Yeah, a friend of mine, an actor, and when he was doing a show, a Christmas show in England, and he had a little fling with a girl on the crew or something, and then he was sort of queer, and then about, I don't know, it wasn't that long, but 6 or 7 years later, she said, by the way, this is your child. So now he has this. So he missed all the nappy stage, all the diapers and everything. He missed all that.
Right, you get to do the fun stuff now.
Perfect.
Wow, that is right out of a movie. Sometimes, like, life is like, you couldn't write that, and I wouldn't believe that if you wrote it. And then it's like, no, that's just life. Yeah.
Or like when you see someone doing something, you think, oh, that's, if that was in a movie, you wouldn't believe it. And that's when people in movies, when they say, oh, is that too much? Is it too big? And I think, no, I mean, look at life. People do the most insane things. And I think my theory about that is, as a performer, is that you can be as big as you like as long as you mean it. So you can embody really insane people that do crazy things, but you have to have a sort of center you're not presenting this thing, you're actually in it. And that's the difference. That's when you can do it.
You said that to me 13 or 14 years ago, and I have never forgotten it.
Really?
And, wow. Yep. When we first met, I think we were talking just like on set or whatever when we were doing the web series, The Outs, and you said that, and I was like, "That's it."
It's a good one. It is a good one. I've never forgotten it. I sort of lived by it, as long as you mean it. And also the other thing is, I've actually put this into my new show. That when people say to me, "Oh, Alan, what's your process?" And I always say, I'm not a cheese. I have no process. Because I feel like I think that sort of overcomplicating, trying to make it.
You're sharp as cheddar, Alan.
I'm sort of more of a camembert. There's
not a bear. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, I wish. I think of things like a curvy line.
Yeah.
Right. And I think saying you have a process makes it a straight line.
Mm.
And I feel like it should just be easy. Why do you complicate something that is actually quite easy? I mean, acting's not that difficult. You just have to pretend to be someone else and mean it. It's not, I mean, kids do it. Everyone can do it. So by having a process and a science and all that stuff to it, I think makes it more complicated and therefore removes it from being personal and authentic. So I'm very I mean, I prepare and things, but I don't have I don't like to think, oh yes, step A, I do this, and then I've step B, and and also the whole thing of leaving, like the methody thing of leaving the scene to think of something in your life that made you feel the same emotions as the character in the scene. So going away and then coming back, whilst the other actor's like, hello, here, waiting. I just think, why don't you just try acting? I mean, I'm a bit of that sort of, just pretend.
Right.
Just
yeah, it's like children.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a little sideline.
Yeah, I love that. So in the world of media and stuff, you mentioned the show Traitors recently. You've been doing that, which is this global hit, smash hit, and you get to bring all this like campy wonderfulness, and it's, you're in your life, I know you love games like this and things like this, so it's kind of like a perfect fit for you. Is this something that fell into your lap, that they approached you? Did you approach them? Like, how did that all come to be?
It just fell into my lap. Like I mean, it is sort of one of these things that I feel like I sometimes, when you start to think about how has this all happened to me? What is going on? How did why have I got this? When you sort of try and analyze things, the only thing I can think of that is a constant in my life and choices and things I made and what I do and is that I've always sort of said yes to things. When sort of random things come up, I'll go, oh, all right, I'll go and live in this country for a bit. Oh yeah, I'll go over here, or oh, I'll do that. That's weird. Yeah, And this was another example of this that I sort of heard. I've got all these different agents I've unscripted now. Agents. That's what it's called. It's kind of funny. And they said, oh, there's some show in Britain. They're kind of maybe going to make an offer about you. It's set in a castle she said in Yorkshire, and it's it's a sort of a murder mystery thing. I was like, what? And then so it sounded intriguing, and then a couple of months later they came back. I had a meeting with them, and I just partly because I thought, what are you thinking? And then they showed me the Dutch one, and I got even though it was in Dutch and I was doing subtitles, and it was sort of much less sort of heightened version than ours. But it was still addictive, and I thought this is really interesting. So I had a meeting with them, and I realized they didn't want me to be. I thought they wanted me to be, hello, I'm Alan Cumming, blah blah blah, and just sort of boring, like I'm an actor who's presenting a show now, and I just thought that's not really my thing. And then I realized they wanted me to be this character. They wanted me to play so we invented this character of this sort of dandy Scottish lord who has got this castle and he dresses in a crazy way and sort of like a bit of a James Bond villain flung in. So it was just, so in a way it's a real celebration and an example of the importance of saying yes to things that are weird and maybe left field. So because I'm having such fun with it. I really, really like it. I've just come back from doing the third season, and it has kind of, I'm having a moment, as my agents keep telling me.
Another one. You're having another moment.
Yes. I was always having a moment, but apparently not. I'm having a bigger moment. And also the whole fashion stuff of it is hilarious as well. And also I think it's interesting, like the way that the Traitors are sort of transcended. Like I did a bunch of press when it came out and just recently. And I did Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, the New York Times, the New Yorker, all these kind of highbrow things that you wouldn't think would. And it was obviously it was about me, but it was they're as fascinated by the show. I think it's really people who never watch these kind of shows, like me, like most of the people on the show who are contestants. I've never heard of them because I don't watch, a lot of those Survivor or anything. So actually, I think it's brought in a whole new group of people to watching a show like this, and the fact it is theatrical and camp and witty I think is a sort of that's the confluence that's made it work. I think.
Yeah.
And also I think because they were clever, the second season they didn't drop them all at once, and so it became a water cooler moment that everyone could share in each week, thinking what's happening. So I think that was a good idea. But it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. I mean, It really is. It's so nuts. It's just nuts. And also my dog Lala's in it. And she's got merch now. It's downstairs, but she has a tote bag with her face on it. It says the Traitors.
Man, I'll go to the website today, Alan. Just one more thing for me to buy. I can't help but think that how RuPaul brought drag into mainstream culture. I feel like camp is being brought into a spotlight that has never been seen by a lot of people before. I recently was talking to a straight friend of mine. He was like, campy? What is campy? And then I said Traitors. He's like, oh, it made sense to him.
But that's the touchstone for definition of camp now. Oh, I like that. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think camp is much misunderstood, especially in America. Apparently, the Met Ball a couple of years ago, the theme was camp, and people didn't really know what that meant. Mm-hmm. Because I think camp here means this sort of gay, or sort of femi. I think that's what how a lot of the time people think of it, or it has become to be known like that. And I think actually it's much more about sort of wit and sharing, raising an eyebrow or with the audience. You're kind of in cahoots with the audience, mm-hmm. and it's sort of coded as well. A lot of it's coded. I mean, there was things like all the time I make dirty jokes on the Traitors, and I don't know how. I made a ton in this last season. Let's see how many get through. But just nice saying that here's a tip and just the tip. I'm going to I'm just putting things like that in. And then there was a thing where I went in and said, "Hello, good morning, crumpet munchers," and there's actually quite a lot of queer people on this season. And the two lesbians high five when I said that, and I said crumpet. So I think things like that are oh my God. That is camp, and in a sort of fun, witty, slightly subversive way. And I think and I do think I realize it's so funny. There's some people who every day put pictures of me up on Instagram, and I find it fascinating because I just think, where the fuck do they get these pictures? But from all my working life, there's all these pictures of me and various things. And I think, gosh, people have always dressed me up, and and I don't go around looking like how I look in magazines and photo shoots, or how I look in the Traitors, but I like it, and I think people see me as a little dolly, you know what I mean? A willing dolly to dress up, and I think that I'm nearly, I'm in my 60th year. The fact that a man of that age is being perceived on a mainstream sort of reality competition show in America, wearing sort of screwing with the binary of what is appropriate for a man or a woman to wear. I think that's a really positive thing, and I hope that my hope is that the next time they see some kid on the street wearing a dress or something like that, they won't think it's so weird because they've seen me wearing practically a dress or something on telly. So I think it's all about exposure therapy again.
Exposure therapy. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, there it is. Bringing it back to that. It's exposure therapy and giving people an opportunity to see something in a way that gets them a little more comfortable with it.
And if you're not scared with me, you're not scared by me, why would you be scared by them? So it's, it's interesting. I think I once said I'm the acceptable face of deviance because. And what I meant by that is that I was able to, for a long time, like in the early 2000s and late 90s, when I was first starting to be famous in America, and I would go on talk shows and things and talk about marriage equality or things. There weren't many people able to do that then, and I had a sort of a mainstream platform and a sort of a personality that is not scary, unless I'm in the Traitors. but I think that's what so I sort of saw myself as I can talk about, because I'm sort of naughty, and yeah, I can get my point across probably more effectively than if it was someone. Well, I certainly have a bigger platform because of
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And I think it's just I come at it a different way.
Yeah.
But I think you're able to make your point in a really potent way by doing that.
Yeah. And now I love hearing, how you were saying there's more queer folks on this season of Traitors. And now you recently signed, it was announced, a first look producing deal with NBC Universal.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, how do you plan to use this expanded platform to amplify queer voices and give more of a stage and a platform to folks?
Well, I sort of see it in a way much like the model of Club Cumming, which is that there's, when Club Cumming started, there were certain things that I thought would be a good idea to do, several of them which we're still doing, but many new things have come and it's evolved and changed and has its own sort of, I'm not there all, I've been away for months, so I keep in touch with what's going on, but I feel it's sort of, there's things, for example, there's things that I've got that have been producing or been attached to, and ideas that I've got personally that I'm going to present to them. But I'm also and also, those are my taste. So you can imagine they're kind of weird, or they're pretty queer in terms of their sensibility, at least. But then also, I think I want to sort of reach out, and people are already reaching out to me and sort of trying to find a way that I can, even if it's like, if something like right now there's a project I've got in Scotland of this book that we got optioned, and so now we're trying to get a queer writer to write it, a queer Scottish writer. So things like that, like, it's really important to me, like how, and like I did say to the Traitors people, the representation is terrible. In terms of race, it was very good. It's very diverse, but not in terms of queer. So that really changed this season, and I'm really so grateful that they took that on and listened. And also, I think it's only can make it better. It can only make the show better, And also, I think it's really interesting for people to see queer people in ways that they wouldn't think. Like the girl who used to be the Bachelorette, who's now a lesbian. That to me is a fascinating story that America should see. Or a member of the royal family who was married and had kids, and then he left his wife, and then she walked him down the aisle and he married a flight attendant boyfriend. I mean, it's just hilarious. Yeah. That's really, and he's a member of the royal family. I think having those people on a show like The Traitors, I think, is a really positive thing. So in the same way as like that, I want to try and tell stories and also give work to people, that are slightly, have the odds set against them. So it's a great opportunity, and maybe nothing will ever get made, but at least it's a foot in the door, and it's sort of opening people's minds.
Right, and it's a fight worth fighting and trying.
Right, yeah, and they wouldn't be giving me the money if they didn't think there was some good to be had from it. I'm not doing this just to be nice.
Well, you are having a moment.
I'm having my moment. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have merch with my dog on it.
Not the first time you've had merch, though.
Oh, I'm merched up the wazoo.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we love your lotion. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on this program, but,
Coming all over, yes. I've still got my, like today I still have lots of the soap because it doesn't sort of go off. And that was my favourite, which is Coming in a Bar. That was what the soap was called.
And look at that, it was foreshadowing. You opened a bar.
I know. Look at this. This is what I got when we were in Texas on tour. Somebody bought me this.
Boy, crazy. Wow.
Isn't that funny? It's right underneath my computer when I look at the screen. It's so funny.
I love that. Well, I haven't touched on, you do so many things. You're also a New York Times bestseller. You wrote Not My Father's Son, which I was a huge fan of. I loved listening to you read it. It was like being in, like, next to a fireplace and you were telling me your like deepest stories, It was just such a personal experience listening to you with my headphones on. And I'm curious. So you spoke to these challenging parts of your childhood, and you talk about navigating these identities and this trauma. And so as you are from your background of being, you know, an immigrant, and you're also an activist, and you're also a queer kid, and you're also an artist, how do you approach your art and activism as something that speaks to each other as you develop your career? Does one inform the other? Does it help you choose which projects to say yes to and no to, and how you want to show up for certain political movements?
Yes, I mean, I sort of, it does do that, but I don't really think about it as two separate things. I think that's the thing. I just sort of think of it as one thing. You know, I don't think people would bring me things. I mean, sometimes I get offered things and I was like, you know, there'll be some reason that I just think I wouldn't want to do that. But rarely, because people know who I am, and I'm pretty obviously loud about what I think and what I feel. But I just feel it's sort of something that you know, being Scottish, and I've been spending so much more time in Scotland, and we have a new home there, and we're sort of splitting our time more. And it's really interesting to sort of feel that when I'm there, I'm in a country that is more aligned with my values, and because my values are such because I was brought up in that country and I had that experience. And I think so to be in a country that is where fairness and justice and looking out for each other is just, that's not even a political idea. That's just a sort of ingrained in just the way you live your life. I think I found it very difficult coming to America when, you know, if you didn't, like when I had to go, you know, because I had a health insurance, I'd pretend I had whooping cough or something so I could get medicine for my friends who didn't have insurance. Things like that appalled me. Whereas in Scotland, you just go to the doctor and get it, and for free. And obviously you pay it in your taxes, of course, but just sort of stuff like that. The system or the way that education works and how, you know, it's interesting. I used to think, you know, in America, you really need money. A good deal of money to ensure you have a good education, a good healthcare, and actually justice. You need money for all those things. And in where I come from, you don't. You get that even if you're poor. So that's really, I think, where I've come from. It's a thing of like, I feel these things can happen. You know, we could end child poverty in this country. We could get, you know, the health service could be revolutionized if we just taxed, you know, some billionaires. It is possible to do it, and and I think people are scared of change, and the whole this socialized medicine, all that means, it just means that people are looked after. And I just think there's the whole thing about kindness. I think in America there's still a sort of every man for himself sort of ethos that is also ingrained in the whole sort of American way. That's, you know, kind of the American dream is based on pushing people to the side to get your dream. It's not a collective dream. It's a personal dream. And so I think that that's where I'm different. And that's not it is a judgment. Of course it is a judgment, but it's just because it's by dint of where I grew up and how, so my work and my life and my sort of activism are just all merged for me. And I think I sometimes get to do things in my work that really push something I believe in, politically or socially or something. And other times I just, you know, like do the Traitors and wear funny frocks and challenge people's perceptions of what middle-aged men should be wearing on television. So, you know, there's always something you can. I don't ever do anything where I think, this is just dull. But like, you know, the thing when we first met, like The Outs was such a great show and such a revolution in terms of the way that perception of young queer people and people of your generation as well. Nobody had seen that before, and it wasn't all just about sex, which a lot of those shows, those early web shows, queer web shows were. it was so tender. I always say that it had such tenderness to it, and that was such a lot to do with obviously Adam's writing, but you two's relationship and your on-screen chemistry together was just so tender. I always remember the one when you have on the subway and you've got his shoe. Remember that bit? Is it your shoe? Is it he brings your shoe? Or you bring
My shoe, I think.
Yeah. That's so lovely. I always think of that. But it's true. I think that's what's great. You can, and that really was an interesting thing. I think that it was started as a crowdfunding thing, and then it kind of bloomed and blossomed. And that to me is how I like to work. Actually, I really like sort of the idea of I'm a bit over kind of if I'm going to do my own work, which I do quite a lot. I actually like the idea of doing something small and building it in that way, not kind of. Although I better not tell that to the NBC Universal people. But taking an idea and making sure it remains authentic before you take it out into the world to which is exactly what that happened was. It stayed its own authentic thing when it could have sort of sold out and been a bit more mainstream. And I think I have such fond memories of that show.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Alan. And it's also a testament to a time when, like you said earlier, when you take risks and you're like, oh, I just want to do something, we were, like you said, we had no money. We were doing one episode at a time. I think we had 3 episodes out, and you tweeted at Adam like, oh, I love this show. And we were like, we love you, Adam. Alan. And then
I started remember thinking, gosh, he's really talented. I wonder I should maybe meet him for the things in the future. And we have worked together a lot of times. Since but then the next thing I knew he said, why don't we write you a part in the show? And so then I was playing myself in it and I loved it. And it's sort of, I think it's a really good thing. I think if you like something, tell people, because you might get a job off them. But it is a really good thing. It's like I think I do that now, and I just when I really like something, I make a point of reaching out. I'm just saying, because I think it's people. It's interesting about the Traitors. Actually, that's when I knew it was going to be a big hit. Was that so many people reached out? I mean, I've been on television for decades, and nobody reached. No, when you're on telly and people go, "Oh, I saw you on telly," and like my mum doesn't even call me now. She'll a week later goes, "Oh, I saw it." Yeah, like so. It's boring for everybody, but or it's not boring. It's just sort of my life, and. People say, which one was it, Fallon or Jimmy, or what were you on? Anyway, when this started, it was my phone was going crazy with people like reaching out from all across the sort of zeitgeist and demographic spectrum, and I thought, oh, that's so interesting. It's really hit a nerve in some way that hasn't, all the other things I've done for years haven't, and I think that's really fascinating to me. So yes, reach out. And of course, now I get people, randos, on my Instagram trying to be in it.
Like slip into your DMs, Daddy.
Sliding into my DMs, and I am saying, with the sort of the criteria of why they'd be a good Traitors contestant.
Are they sending you audition tapes?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes.
Wow.
Do you know what's so funny? Ari Shapiro.
Of course.
So we have a laugh. So we do this, or we do a cabaret show called Ochanoi, because I'm Scottish, he's Jewish, and we have this thing where I do my own solo show. Oh, now Ari's doing his own solo show. I've written memoirs. Oh, now Ari's written a memoir. I'm hosting a competition reality show. Oh, now Ari's hosting a competition. He's doing the Mo. It comes out soon. Wow. And I call it. I say it's like all about Eve. Like he's the understudy. He's coming, and I call it all about Ari.
Great camp reference, by the way. If any of you haven't watched that film, there's a good moments of camp in there.
Oh, it's so good. It's where fasten your seatbelts is going to be a bumpy night. That's where that comes from.
That's right. It's like who said it?
Ari.
Yeah. What? It's like, is it Shakespeare or was it camp? It's like it's in the modern lexicon, right?
Yes, I love that. Is it Shakespeare or is it camp?
Well, Alan, this has been so delightful. Are there any other projects or anything that you want people to know about, point us towards activism, things to check out, support, anything?
Well, I just want to, I really can't emphasize how important it is to vote and to make sure you're registered to vote and to try and encourage young people in your lives to vote, and how their silence will not protect them, to paraphrase Audre Lorde. And I just think that's what I mean. And also, I like, on my Instagram, I try and do on my stories, put things out every day about things that I see I think are important politically, environmentally, and all that stuff. I really think that's a great sort of way to, just to give people options of what's going on. And it's also I think really important to think about good news as well. There are some things happening. There are some even with trans. There's some states have repealed the anti-trans health things, bans. There's good stuff going on, and that's what I love about going out into the country doing my concerts. I meet, even when I go to states where I think, oh my God, this is terrifying here, and one step away from being arrested, you meet really great people and really lovely people who are, just happen to be living in a place where the people who make the laws are more right wing and not liberal. So it's really important to remember that as much as we are deafened by this sort of wave of hatred and persecution, there are really positive things, and we are living in a time where we do, for now, have a voice, so we should use it.
Yes.
The end.
Great. The end. Thank you, Alan. You can follow Alan at Alan Cumming, really.
That's me. Yes.
On Instagram and all the things.
It used to be called Alan Cumming Snaps because it was pictures. But
yeah.
People always put an S on the end of my name, so people thought it was Alan Cumming's Naps. It's this picture that was just me sleeping.
He naps. Oh no! You want a nap? You don't really get them much these days, but
no, not well. Yeah, I'm a good napper though, but no, I could do with. I might have one now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been great. And it's the end. That's what I'll cut it.
Yeah.